Thank you for being here. Thank you for your work for Georgia. Today we will talk about the 2025 enlargement report and situation and political dynamics in Georgia. As far as yesterday, we heard from Commissioner Cos, Georgia's candidacy status is just only on paper. So how would you assess this position and this assessment from Commissioner, and based on the numbers and based on the reports about Georgia?
Well, I think it was described well. It is truly just on the paper. Of course, the Georgian government halted the process themselves, so there is that. But also from the side of the European Union, as people might read or hear about the enlargement report, they will hear that there is criticism in all of the aspects where Georgia could progress more towards democracy and, of course, Europe. Of course, it includes both judiciary or foreign policy or pro-Russia leaning policies, and of course the abuse of human rights, which is very dire these days.
Yeah. And also in the report, we read that Georgia's so-called government shifted Georgia's foreign policy towards the Russia. And it's a parting and departing country from the European Union. What do you think are the main indicators of it?
Well, the report also mentions them, but overall we can also add a few. What the report mentions that the alignment with the foreign policy of the EU dropped from 53 to 40%. It's quite a significant amount. Also, Georgia did not align with the EU sanctions on Iran, Belarus, or Russia. The other thing that was being mentioned is that there was a huge increase actually in flights from Georgia to Russia. Originally, Georgia, I do remember that still, at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, they limited that, and there was just an increase from Russia to Georgia occasionally for people who didn't want to join the Russian army. But now it's also vice versa. So, of course, this free flow of people can be also free flow of agents and various people who are pro-Russian or have their money in there, which is very important. And although there have been abstentions on pro-Ukrainian resolutions from the Georgian government, really limited cooperation on sanctions circumvention, which is really important, because who does not help with sanctions circumvention is as much as helping the Russian war. So Georgian government oftentimes, of course, says neutrality and being like, oh, we just talk, but they are actively helping the Russian war in Ukraine against Ukrainians.
True. I mean, in this situation, either you are with Ukraine and the civilized world, I mean, the NATO and the European Union, either you are backing Russia with your actions or even inactions. So about the pro-Russian foreign policy shift, there is a very vulnerable Georgian society to the Russian-style propaganda. And here in the European Parliament, we have one Georgian accredited TV broadcasting company. What do you think about that? I mean, when we're talking about the disinformation and propaganda, isn't it better if we limit disinformation and propaganda in the European Parliament first, and then let's talk about how challenging it's in Georgia and how vulnerable is Georgian society for Russian-style propaganda coming from Georgian Dream and their tools like TV Medi?
Well, I absolutely agree and get that point, and there has been calls about TV Medi specifically, so there might be actually some progress, absolutely. Of course, this is really sort of, to be honest, part of a bureaucracy. Somebody accredits, and it's really hard to take it from them, especially if the relations with the country are not officially suspended, as EU has with Belarus, for instance. With Georgia, you see it also in the enlargement reports. We still have doors open if you do all of these things. So
I mean, the European Union gave a lot of chances, I think, for Georgia, and I mean, negotiations, diplomacy, still that letter sent to Georgian government to still let's give a chance to do something, but at the end, I mean, nothing.
We really like Georgians, and we want the country to be part of the European family. And if some Georgians like hate the idea of, I don't know, European legislation, being part of European family does not necessarily have to be being part of the EU. It's also about some, basic similar values that we all share, which are, of course, also human rights. But also, just quickly on the disinformation topic, of course, that's something that the whole world faces. It's not just Georgia. Some societies might be more vulnerable, but I think it's always important to look out for anybody who uses especially emotional language. If somebody uses something to instill fear in you or anger, that's probably a disinformator. And that does not mean that there isn't something that causes a fear, but a language that's like in absolute terms, for instance, this is going, I don't know, this is going to completely destroy your society or something. That's where they are trying
because
to
they
manipulate.
are saying that European Union wanted to open the second front, so they're increasing these fears
Yes.
based on, I think, what we experienced in 2008 and even before our parents and grandparents remembering.
Absolutely, that's how you recognize manipulation.
Yeah.
Of course, there are politicians lie, a lot of them. Yes, even democratic ones, even the extreme ones. Everybody, I've met them. I'm meeting them for 6 years. But there are people who just say like, oh yeah, we will uh, give more money to students, or something, and it's like, okay, where will you get the money? And then you get into nitty gritty. But it's like standard politics of the heckle, like something for something,
Yes, exactly.
And I don't really like it, but it's how it goes. But then there are the politicians who are really dangerous, who will not say like, oh, we might trade something like this, but they are actively trying to instill fear in you that something will completely change. People will get war into your country, destroy your society. And I think that that's easily recognized disinformators. You don't even have to check 3 sources, which is a good thing always.
It's always good to
yeah,
double check.
but to just listen to the language they use.
They're also, Georgian Dream is using also propaganda. They're spreading information that European Union will take our identity from us, meaning that they're referring to the LGBT rights, because Georgian society is really religious. They're very conservative, and I think that's playing with the emotions and mentality is really hard in Georgia. So, what do you think? How it's in the European Union?
Funnily enough, all of this is considered Russian propaganda in the European Union, because nothing like that is happening. Of course, we consider every human being to be a human being and should have equal rights. But even in our countries, marriage is not for everyone. It is considered something between a man and a woman. Also, I think it's like important to note that for instance, Ukraine, which everybody I think in Georgia would now say, oh, they are very pro-European, they want to join the EU and everything. I've also been there, and I met people, and they were like, oh, I'm afraid of I don't know, that men will not be able to open doors for women and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's Russian propaganda. I'm in Ukraine and I'm listening to this from you guys. So no, we still can held doors open and everything. There is no legislation like that. I personally think, actually, I live in quite conservative world, and countries are part of the EU for over 30 years, some even more, and nothing in this regard changed. So I think it's really important to know that these things are easy cultural wars on which the government can actually sway attention.